Hello, and welcome to this screening of the original When a Stranger Calls. My name is Fred Walton, the movie's director and co-writer. As you may already know, it all began as a short film put together by myself and Steve Fecky. Steve had a connection with the story editor of a short-lived television series called Quinn Martin's Tales of the Unexpected. So we were sitting around his living room one afternoon trying to come up with story ideas for the show so that we might get hired to write an episode of it. This was in 1977. After kicking around a few possible plot lines, Steve told me about an article he remembered having read 5 years earlier in the Los Angeles Times about a babysitter in an upscale suburb of Los Angeles who started getting creepy phone calls from someone who kept asking her, "Have you checked the children?" I said to Steve, "To hell with Quinn Martin, we should make this as a short film ourselves." At the time, shorts still occasionally would run in movie theaters before the main attraction. But at the very least, we thought it could showcase our talents and we'd get work out of it. So that's what we did. We pooled our meager resources and we made the short titled The Sitter. Well, we couldn't get it distributed in movie theaters, nor did we get any work from it. So we thought, okay, we'll come up with a way to continue the story, and we'll approach low-budget movie companies, and we'll say, here's the first act. All we need now is this much money to shoot the rest of it and create a full-length feature. There's a saying in Hollywood, or there was back then, it's better to be lucky than good. And I believe it to be true. There are a lot of very talented people in Los Angeles, and all over the place, really, who never get a break. Eventually, Steve and I got lucky. Incredibly lucky. Is the story told in the first act of Stranger an urban legend? I guess so, though it was one I had not been aware of. Before shooting the short, I had told the story of what I was working on to friends, and a couple of them had said, "Oh, I know that story. My grandmother told me that one night when she was babysitting me." Or, "I heard that story at summer camp when we were sitting around the campfire." But Steve had read it in the Los Angeles newspaper. And when we were shooting the feature, on meal break one day, Carol Kane's stand-in came up to me and said, "I just realized the story you're telling here, and I want you to know it actually happened in the small town on Long Island where I grew up. But it was the estranged father of the 2 children who was making those calls to the sitter. Estranged and deranged. All of which has led me to believe over the years that urban legends are not just made out of whole cloth. They're based upon fact. And anything that you can imagine, no matter how improbable, sick, or twisted, someone else, somewhere, has not only imagined it, but acted upon it, has actually done it. Once the movie came out, friends would have jokingly say to me things like, "I didn't know you were such a sadist, putting audiences through something like that." What they didn't understand is that to be able to effectively frighten people, you need to put yourself in the place of the victim, of the person being stalked, not of the stalker. And the more plausible the story is, the more possible, the easier that is to do. I've never been attracted to stories that involve aliens or monsters or made-up threats that cannot be real. But it's not always easy living with that. For months after completing the movie, after having worked on it and lived with it day after day, before going to bed at night, I would say to myself, "Now, did I lock the front door? Or do I just think I locked the front door?" And I'd go back downstairs to double check it again and again and again. I've related this in other stories about the making of When a Stranger Calls many times over the years. But here's something I don't think I've ever brought up before. I had no particular affinity to scary movies. I still don't. It's not like I grew up as a fan of the genre. My older brother, at the age of about 9 or 10, had been allowed to go see The War of the Worlds. After nagging our parents incessantly about it, and it gave him nightmares for weeks afterwards. So my parents decided, no scary movies for this one. When Psycho came out, a lot of my friends got to go see it, but I wasn't allowed. One night, however, I was 15, My parents had gone out, I was home alone, and I watched on TV an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents titled An Unlocked Window. I'd never been more terrified by anything in my life. It was about people alone in a house facing a threat from outside. I was in the comfort of my own home, but that made it all the more frightening. There was no place safe I could go. I couldn't run home. I was already home. Houses, particularly older ones, have a way of making strange sounds, odd creaks and groans, settling noises, I guess you would call them, that you pay no attention to during the daytime, but at night, they can take on a horrifying life of their own. So be glad that on this night, you're here in a theater, surrounded by people, and that you have a home to return to and feel safe. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.